What's good, everybody? It's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again with another YouTube collaboration here on the channel. I'm just so glad to be here with all you brothers today, and I really have a special treat for you today. Today we're here with a brother, man. He's really, really talented. Brother has a really good YouTube channel. The name of the YouTube channel is the Kosher Clinician, but I'm gonna let him explain who he is and what his YouTube content is about. Go ahead, brother.
Thanks again, Brother O'Shea, for having me on the platform. I go by the name the Kosher Clinician on my YouTube platform, but on my Facebook page, I go by Seven Smalls. And so I started the channel, the Kosher Clinician, as an outpouring to more or less reach and to impact men of color. You know, a lot of times, when we look at a lot of things that, Black men deal with, we have things from a lawyer's perspective, we have things from an anecdotal perspective, but we don't have things from a clinical perspective. So I came up with the Kosher Clinician because as the clinician, a lot of the things that I do is not filtered through the feminist lens. My work is from a Black masculine perspective, similar to Dr. T.S. Johnson. And so I look to more or less empower brothers from a therapeutic lens, but also using red pill concepts and red pill insight. And so I went by the name Seven Smalls or the Kosher Clinician because I believe that there are 7 core principles that all men must more or less utilize in order to become an optimized male. And those 7 core principles are family, female psychology, travel, finances, faith or religion, finances, and also education. So that's why I came up with the term the Kosher Clinician, because in my mind, if it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. So kosher means complete. And a lot of men are broken because they're not complete and they haven't gotten the proper information. So that's why I started the channel, the Kosher Clinician, taking a risk, because what I'm trying to more or less convey to a lot of men is not more or less predicated based on PC or more or less secularization.
Okay. And you have, despite, you being a newer YouTuber and coming on the platform, you have a really talented insight on a lot of different things. Hopefully we'll put out more things in the future. But one of the things we're talking about today is you have a show on the YouTube channel, and didn't get so many views, but it was really good. It's really one of the better presentations that I've probably seen all month.
Right.
And it was something almost to do with, are Black women empowered?
Right.
Are depowered. And when I saw that, because you initially had reached out to me, I didn't know who you were.
Yeah, right.
And I took a look at what you were talking about. I said, wow, this is good, right? What is the inspiration for you to come up with this particular content?
Well, listen, a lot of guys, Brother O'Shea, have more or less broached the topic of the strong and the independent woman. But I wanted to add my own spin to it because I have been more or less letting this topic marinate in my psyche for a while. But in my best estimate, a lot of our women have been more or less empowered to be depowered, meaning they come to men not from a feminine perspective, which is more or less their God-given intrinsic qualities, but they come to the men from a masculine perspective, which is power. And because their ability to be more or less empowered to be depowered, they more or less lost out on a lot of good men, and they have more or less learned how to use their feminine virtue, which is their femininity. And in that process of being empowered to be depowered, many won't get married. And as a brother known on YouTube, Kevin Samuels, always say, some will die alone. And so I've used that moniker and that concept because I am an advocate for the family. But in order for a woman to understand what men want, because society a lot of times never asks men what they want, they have been empowered, meaning they've been given position. If you think about Goldman Sachs, they just recently gave Black women about $10 billion in incentives, but they've been empowered to be depowered because they don't have a context or contextualization that's predicated on family, and including the Black man as being the leader in the family.
Now that's right. Let me ask you this, because I just did a show with someone that we both are very familiar with, the Honorable Dr. T.S. Johnson. And
yes, sir. Right.
Man, the wonderful work. Number one, the brother is a genius. He's an intellect, and he's really studied this from an academic perspective. And you have also studied it from a clinical perspective.
Yes.
By dealing with a lot of African-American men. But who is empowering Black women in the first place? And why do you think that Black women feel in comparisons to black men. You know, because if you think about a lot of African American women, they feel that either they're empowered to do things that normally women were not allowed to do. You know, maybe like in the 60s or 50s, or they're not feeling that they're empowered enough to do more. So when black women are talking about this empowerment impact, who is it that's empowering black women to the point where they feel that they are empowered to do great things?
Well, listen, I think the arch nemesis that's more or less been the catalyst to more or less empowering black women definitely been liberal white education. I think that's the first nemesis. I think the second one has been the black church, because the black church has not always been more or less have not more or less been stalwarts and more or less preaching objective theology and objective truth. And sadly, I think simps have more or less empowered black women because they have not told black women what men really think, aspire, and really want. So when you look at those three core elements, in my opinion, those are the three core elements that has more or less empowered black women to be depowered. And then I would say even their delusions, their own personal delusions, which in the clinical world is a cognitive distortion. Because a lot of men have presented the evidence to what black men want, but instead of them adhering to what black men want, they tend to minimize it, which is a thinking error, or more or less magnify their own importance, which is the worship of the queen complex. So it's a combination, it's a myriad of issues, but those are the four core elements that I feel, Brother O'Shea, that's more or less have empowered black women to be depowered. And then also you can talk about matrilineal succession. Their own mothers, their own grandmothers, they have empowered them to be depowered.
Let's break those down. I like those. So we have a bonus one, which is the matrilineal succession, right?
Succession.
But let's kind of go. Let's talk about this because both you and Tia Johnson have talked about this. Liberal white education. What I want to know is this: why do black women feel? Because if black people are, because somebody's gonna say, well, you know, African Americans are a protected group. And, you know, T.S. Johnson mentioned something in the last show that I talked to him about. He said that, you know, when he used to look at black issues, he would look at the black community as a whole. Black men and black women are going through the same turbulent issues. However, it feels that when brothers go to college, and obviously we know black women go more than we do, or attend more than we do.
Right.
Black women are feeling more empowered in the classroom than the black men who are in the same classroom, right? Because why is it that liberal white education makes black women feel empowered and black men don't feel the same way? Well, in the same classroom.
Well, that's an excellent observation from an anecdotal perspective. Well, if you look at it through the lens of the esoteric and you look at it through the lens of theology, you know, the scripture says that that the woman will have a desire for her husband, but he will have rulership over her. Some of it is just the thirst for power. Some of it is power. Women want to have power over their men. It's part of our nature. They want to have power over their men. And so when it comes down to the fragmentation of the black man and the black family, they, you know, some of these white liberals understand that black men, when they are more or less empowered, they can be great. So the black man is a threat to the white infrastructure. So they empower the weaker vessel at the expense of the stronger vessel. And so it gives them a false sense of security, similar to what some white males have had, which is a false sense of racial superiority. And so now you got a generation, Brother O'Shea, of women from Gen X that look their nose down on the blue collar black man, that look their nose down on even educated black men, and they think they are better. And so what's happened, you know, you see a bunch of men that more or less deify the feminine at the expense of masculine principles, which in essence have created a simp culture that's been more deleterious to male psyche than anything, and also to the black community.
Let's talk about this piece because it's important, because a lot of black men tend to be more blue collar because, and I know this, and Dr. T.S. Johnson knows this, for a lot of some from brothers that don't have the financial support, and you know, men have to start earning quicker. You know, we have on a shorter leash. We're supposed to go out and start performing faster. Some brothers get involved in trucking, and I'm very thankful for all of our brothers who are in the trucking industry. I ain't got no problem with them. You know, some brothers are mechanics. Some brothers are going into some of the IT fields and things like this. And I understand that a lot of black women look down on those guys, even if those men are making more money than they are with their, respective college degrees. But one thing that you mentioned, that some women in the black community are looking down on black men who are college graduates.
Yes, sir.
Explain why you would say that.
Well, listen, a lot of times earnest blue collar professions are not seen as intellectual. A lot of blue collar professions are not seen as being intellectual. So a lot of times women make a false assertion that because a brother's blue collar, he's not intellectual. And based on the brothers that actually go to college, I don't really understand the query of why they would look their nose down on the brother that got a degree. But I think what it is, in order to make themselves feel good, it's a clinical term we use called reaction formation or projection. In order to make themselves feel good, I got to look down on somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so in their heart of hearts, they know they're not superior to that man. But in order to make themselves feel good, they project what their self-esteem is, which is in essence, is that they're better, and which in essence is leaving a lot of them hopeless and also broken. So that's my best estimate with that particular thing.
Yeah, and also, you hear, because when I was in the California State college system, you would have African American women who are on their way to dental school, on their way to law school, on their way to some kind of, taking a JRE to go to grad school, and then it would almost be like the goalpost was kind of shifted. Well, he's also in school, but you know what? He's boring, or he's lame, or he's I don't like the way he does this or that. You know what I mean? There was always some sort of excuse for, even though he's also black and he's a guy that has good characteristics, there's some reason why she can't be with him or she can't get with him. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
It went back to, well, how tall are you? Or like Dr. T.S. Johnson was saying, a lot of those women were expecting that, hey, you need to make six figures, not like next week. You need to make six figures like right now while you're in the classroom. Right. And I know that, and women will used to even tell guys, and T.S. Johnson talk about this also. Hey, you know what? Like, you want to talk to me? Look, you want to be what? A medical doctor? Okay, tell you what. When you get into medical school and graduate, call me. Right. You know what I mean? Right. That also happened to me too, like, at least twice. And then and I was like, wow, the disrespect. And then you look at the other races of women who were, that wasn't their perspective. They were where you are, and they understood that the path was long. It took time to develop. Yeah. But they definitely would look down on guys. I've seen them do it, at the same time while they're looking down on the brother that's in the classroom with them. They're dating a guy that ain't even in school, and he's doing something probably illegal, or just it happened. But let me talk about this also. You're talking about the black church. How is the black church empowering women to be depowered?
Well, Brother O'Shea, I actually grew up in church. I was a Sunday school superintendent, and I believed in living out the mandates of the gospel as a young man. But the black church have made the church more or less an economic commodity. It's more or less than making it a safe haven for preaching the objective truth of the gospel. And so they have empowered black women a lot of times because they don't tell them the truth, because their self-interest is more in financial security than the security of the soul. And so they empower them because they more or less appease to the feelings of a woman instead of appeasing to more or less objective truth, which holds them accountable and holds the man accountable as well. I'm not against holding black men accountable, because black men need to be held accountable too. But now you have the decimation of the church, Brother O'Shea, because a lot of black men don't go to church, or they don't see the benefits of going to church. And as I conveyed to you, I remember a time when I taught school and taught Sunday school, there were more black men in churches. But now black churches have been more or less reduced to not only the women being over the men sometime in the leadership positions, but nothing but single women, babies, and effeminate men. And so masculine men are not going to tolerate that kind of foolishness. They want to be in an environment where they can feel empowered to be the exemplars, not only in their communities, but also to be the exemplars in the home and the church. More women, some women, Brother O'Shea, submit to their pastors more than they submit to their own husbands, which is out of order. Yeah, they submit to the pastor more than they submit to their own husband. They let the pastor be the anchor of their ship and still allowing the husband to be the anchor of their ship. And I saw it when I grew up in like Church of God in Christ. I grew up in Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal holiness, and I saw it sometime, and it disgusted me. And the series that I started on Facebook, The Manhood Chronicles, I found it necessary to do it and talk about it because a lot of men were telling me their stories in private, but they weren't telling me their stories out. They weren't talking about it openly for fear of retribution. And so we live in such a vibrant, not a vibrant, but a negative matriarchy that men are more or less being pigeonholed at the expense of their mothers, their sisters, and their aunts. But what I'm saying is give me liberty or give me death. I think men should speak out, speak truth to power, do it with clarity, do it with conviction, and do it with a determination to empower other men. And that's why I've taken on this banner, The Manhood Chronicles, the show that I run on the Kosher Clinician, and also just empowering other Black professionals, and we collaborate together because it's needed in this critical moment that we live in called America.
I definitely wouldn't disagree. You have a right there, and obviously we've had some Black pastors who are understanding why Black men are not interested in coming to church at all. Right. And I want to talk to you about also this. Obviously, the Red Pill Spaces talk a lot about simps, and as a recovering one here and there, I do some simping every other Tuesday and Thursday for a few minutes, and then I come back. I'm God is not through with me yet, but but there are some guys who are empowering women. Well, what are the biggest simp is Derek Jackson, but we'll leave him alone.
No doubt.
So how are simps empowering Black women to be depowered?
Well, I came up with a mantra. I came up with an acronym. And so the acronym that I've devised for simp is sacrificing important masculine principles. Simp stands for sacrificing important masculine principles. And when a masculine man teaches his son principles, they're less likely to tolerate some of the BS that we see now. Listen, O'Shea, I came out of high school back in the 90s where everything was everything. And when I was coming out of high school, most guys didn't even look at girls that had babies. We didn't even look at girls that were out there or sexually promiscuous. We saw them as women that we won't really even look at. But now men don't have any standards, so they take the dregs of society and inculcation based on what their mothers have taught. But when a boy has a strong masculine father, the father said, look, boy, don't you talk to that woman because she's not worthy of your time or your attention or your affection. So simps more or less glorify or more or less build other women up because simps give unworthy women hope. Principles. That's what simps do. They sacrifice important masculine principles to the demise of the Black collective of males, but also to the demise of the Black community.
Do you think? Obviously, simps exist in every community, but if you were to give an estimation, do you think that the African American community has more simps than other communities do? And if so, why?
Oh, no doubt. Yes, definitely have more. We take women that are grossly overweight. We take women that have been more or less, as brothers call, ran through, or have kids by multiple men. And a lot of times we have the power to leverage because they were raised by their moms, their aunts, their grandmothers. Through the process of natural lineage succession, they will shame them into more or less those types of women. So they don't have the fathers to teach them, look, son, you can get better, do better than that. And because they have low self-esteem, they accept the dregs of society instead of saying, I deserve better and I want better. Because a lot of women, they say it. You got women that got 4 and 5 kids by different women, different men, but they think they deserve the top tier men. And I say, that's a thinking error. That's delusional in my best estimate. So simps, like I said, a lot of times simps are more or less fostering this foolishness to their own demise. And also because they have low self-esteem and because they have been broken as men.
This one's going to be good, right? Because you talked about that. One of the other reasons is that sisters are being empowered by their own cognitive distortion and some of the delusions that they share about their realities where they are in the dating market. Can you explain what you mean when you say that?
Well, what I mean by cognitive distortions, the evidence is there. You know, the evidence is clear and the evidence is concise. When you have brothers like Kevin Samuels even talking about, you know, you give them more or less a metric for what men want, and you tell them what men want, but instead of them listening and becoming the exemplar to the man want, they reject it with the evidence. A delusion is where you have evidence and you still say contrary due to the cacophony that's going on inside your head. So, you know, the cognitive distortion is that they have the evidence, but they keep rejecting it because they don't want to believe it, because they've been coddled so much and they've been told by society that they are special, they're great, and they deserve the best. Most women, Brother O'Shea, don't come into marriages trying to do what's best for a man. They don't come into a marriage based on what the gospel say about being a wife. They come into a marriage expecting to be served instead of coming to the marriage to serve their husband, which in essence, the man would turn around and serve her by giving her his life, but also giving her provision and protection. So that's a distortion. They want taxation without representation. That's a distortion.
Let me also talk about the matrilineal succession. You talked about that.
Yes,
what
sir.
does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, matrilineal succession is where women have more or less been given more or less instructions from grandmom to great grandmom, from great grandmom to grandmom, and more or less matrilineal succession is a negative form of thinking where they all think the same, where the homes are not more or less are non-existent of having more or less strong men in the family. And so it's matrilineal succession because you have generations after generations of women in the family not being led by masculine men. And because they're not being led by masculine men, O'Shea, you see the deterioration of the Black community and you see the proliferation of the simp culture. So matrilineal succession more or less shows more or less a causal chain or a pattern of women after women, generation after generation of dysfunctionality and toxic behavior that's devoid of masculine authority and masculine principle. That's what I mean by matrilineal succession. Grandmama, she didn't have a husband. My mama didn't have a husband. The daughter don't have a husband, and her child is not going to get a husband because they have that same thinking error where everybody defers to the feminine instead of embracing and respecting the masculine.
Then let me ask you this, since we have talked about those 5 things. Mm-hmm. What is the correct way? Because we're in a time where, I'm gonna be honest, on my channel, I don't even want to talk to Black women. So because I don't want to be one of those people that they're thinking that, oh well, you're hating on us, you hate your mom, and then you're a misogynist. So I don't even make any content at all dealing with women,
right?
Talking to them. But there are Black men out there that, like myself, that we care about our African American female counterparts. And we do understand that they have an important role to play in the Black community as well as us.
Right.
And when they make good points about some of the Black male dysfunction that we have, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with it. So in your estimation, what is the correct paradigm to follow with empowering Black women the correct way?
Well, the paradigm to follow is holding them accountable. The paradigm that follows for men like you and Kevin Samuels and other men, telling women the truth instead of telling them what they want to hear. That's the paradigm to follow. The paradigm to follow is to be unapologetically masculine. And if they don't want to get with the program, you just ignore them or leave them alone. Listen, Black women are not more or less encapsulated only to America. Black women are across the diaspora. They're in Africa, they're in Brazil, they're in Costa Rica, they're in Belize, they're in Colombia, they're everywhere. Black men don't have to deal with American Black women if they're not willing to be cooperative. The scriptures say, don't give your pearls to swine. And so if a woman is not willing to cooperate, if she's not willing to take objective principles and objective truth and more or less internalize it to become a great woman, you ignore her. You just leave her alone. And you get with women that can understand you and respect your program and respect what you're trying to more or less pontificate as it relates to legacy building, if marriage is one of the things that you want to do. And I say that if, because in my greatest estimate, I've been married for 25 years, but I don't see the benefit if I was a single man of being married in this current malaise called America.
Let me ask you this important question. I definitely agree with you 100%.
Right.
I listen to some of the other arguments out there that from black women who talk about black men and they talk about the lack of opportunities that black men have to create for themselves, the lack of opportunities they create for the black community as a whole. We can sit back, we can be objective and say, they're not lying about all of this. Some of these things are definitely true. And that's why I try to work so hard, tirelessly, try to bring a lot of brothers into the content space to unify a lot of black men that were somehow just in different spots, There are black men over here, black men over there, and I've been trying to be the great unifier, and other brothers, and trying to bring our talented guys together to try to achieve a goal. But I want to know from your perspective, because some people might say black men have to give women a reason for them to submit to. What are black men giving, black women? What is it that black men can do? What situations are black men creating for black women to get back in the feminine roles, to get back in the submissive roles, to take that stress off of them and pressure off of them? That might be the question from a sister today watching this podcast, saying, brother, you're right, but what are black men going to be dependable enough that we can be that way and trust them to do so? What would you say to a woman that may have that question?
Well, listen, there are two myths, O'Shea. There's a myth of financial merit, meaning if a man has financial or fiscal power and fiscal responsibility, that woman's going to automatically submit. And I say that's a misnomer, because you can have all the money that you want, and if you're not masculine at your core and you're not masculine at heart, a woman still won't submit. A lot of women are going to have to go through what's called the evolutionary process, where they're more or less willing to do a lot of introspection and where they're being held accountable by other women. There are plenty of rich men and billionaires and men with money. And look what Jeff Bezos' situation got him. Look at what, what's the guy, Kanye West, he's a billionaire. Look at what his situation got him. A lot of women live in the world of make-believe, where they feel like they want the best of the best of the best of the best. If Jesus came and gave them resources and gave them an environment of hope and privilege, they will find a reason to divorce Jesus Christ himself. And so, and then also when you more or less systematically, more or less empower black women at the behest of black men, excuse my language, what in the hell is black men are expected to do? You can't build black women for 40 and 50 years and make them weak. But then you got a bunch of narcissistic, entitled women to say, okay, what are you willing to do to get me to submit? If you're really a submissive woman, you'll submit anyway. It shouldn't have anything to do with resources or finances. A truly submissive woman will submit if she's been more or less under masculine authority. And a lot of these women have not, Brother O'Shea, been under masculine authority to respect a black man, because that's negative socialization. One of the things as a clinical therapist, we call it nature versus nurture, right? And so nature is the internalization of what's inside of a woman, but nurture is her socialization. And so even if a woman at her intrinsic hard drive has more or less been designed to be feminine, her socialization have more or less overridden her true femininity. And because a lot of our women are so recalcitrant and so more or less so petty, that even if a man had money and status, as I said earlier, Jesus Christ himself, they will find a reason to divorce him. So, they got to do the internalization. Other women must hold other black women accountable. And I do agree some black men need to step the game up, but you got decent, good black brothers that make decent salaries. And black men and black women were muse of the same cause. We went to struggle together on up to 1965, where the Lyndon B. Johnson administration empowered black women to be depowered. So, listen, the Pookies and the Ray Rays that we talk about, or the Raekwons and the Man-Mans, that's only a percentage of the black men. Great men like you and other black men, they're looking for good women. But because black women and a lot of women practice something called hypergamy, brief false law, that regardless of what you have, they're going to still find a reason to more or less subjugate you and always aspire to better, which in essence have empowered them to be depowered based on their cognitive distortion of magnification and their delusion, which is a cognitive distortion.
Wow. That was great. You know what? I really appreciate, a lot of the things that you're saying today on the interview, because, you talked about this a little bit earlier before we started.
Right.
A lot of black men have been in a situation where, Goldman Sachs is empowering black women with the 10 billion of their other companies. And a lot of black men as a collective, you know, especially in America where we don't own the country, and you know, the advantages seem to be, you know, black women have been, you know, kind of put up here over us in the community and stuff like that. And a lot of black men don't really have a lot of a safe spaces. And you do see a lot of people in your practice. I know that you're a licensed therapist, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Psychotherapist. What is the mentality for that you feel that the average black man who understands that a lot of women, a lot of black women are empowered with Black Girls Rocks, and that, you know, a lot of things are catered towards them in the country, and they've kind of been assisted by Goldman Sachs. What is the average thinking that you feel that the average African American male, how does he read? What do you think is going on through his mind, how he feels about himself?
Well, he's internalizing his oppression. He's repressing his true masculinity to more or less satiate the divine feminine. You know, the more you see a woman rise, and that more or less reinforces the negative notion that you're not good as, or you're not better than. And so because of that, that creates a culmination or the constant evolution of simp culture. When you constantly keep building black women at the expense of black men, it internalizes the cognitive distortion that I'm less than, that I'm not as good as. And so it puts the man in a subservient position where he's willing to acquiesce to all the whimsical needs of the woman. And which in essence, the woman don't respect him, because women only respect power. They only respect power and masculine men. So you know, so it's like an ongoing, non-ending cycle. I tell men to divest until they get what they want. Work on themselves, focus, travel, get the passport. And you know, people always try to shun men, talking about simping and tricking and all that. But listen, if a man want to use his money to meet other women, that's his business. White men been doing it for years, and that's between him and God. So I don't get concerned about a man doing what he wants to do with his own money. I think black men should focus on themselves and their own self-interest, because as you saw for this last election, Brother O'Shea, black women did not vote for the black man in the black community and the black family. They voted for themselves. And so I tell black men to vote for themselves. As Brother Ron Neal say, black male empowerment, black male agency. Vote for yourself, empower your own self, and continue to empower each other as we use these platforms and channels to give black men alternatives and to also bolster and build their self-esteem, because black men have very low self-esteem, Brother O'Shea. That's why they tolerate some of the BS that they tolerate. And me as the clinical therapist is here to break those cognitive distortions and more or less calibrate that schema that they have so they can start seeing themselves in a more positive light. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Well, let me ask you a question. What for people who don't know about your channel, if they were to subscribe to your channel from our interview, what kind of content will they be benefiting from, and what kind of stuff will you be talking about on your channel?
Well, listen, they're going to get a therapeutic context or a therapeutic contextualization from the red pill lens. They're going to get 7 core principles that more or less going to be utilized to make them become an optimized male. And so my channel was actually started back in January of this year. It's a very new channel. And, you know, and I realized that this, you know, the YouTube thing is work. And so I'm dedicated to helping these men find solutions to not only their pain, but finding solutions to a channel that's dedicated from not only a clinical perspective, but also from a red pill masculine perspective to empower them and give them hope and start living and doing things based on their own self-interest. That's what they get from my channel. And also they can check me out on Facebook under 7 Smalls or Moses Stevens. 7 Smalls, Seventh, Smalls, Small. They can reach me as a friend there, or they can check me out on my YouTube channel called The Kosher Clinician. Because if it's not 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. So everything I do is organic. It's not filtered through PC. It's not filtered through political correctness. It's from a pure, unapologetically masculine perspective. That's what my channel will offer those men that subscribe to my channel.
Brother, you've really done an excellent job today. I want to thank you for, number one, reaching out to me. I know it took some time, and a lot of guys reach out to me a lot, and I can't get to everybody, and but hopefully I can try to get, because, you know, and I'm not saying for y'all to email me out there the thing, because I got a lot of guys that I can only bring onto the platform. You know, and right now it's almost 4:40 in the morning here, so that's another night that I've spending there. But now I am thankful that you at least wanted to come to our community, and I know that you're a brother that can add a lot of value, and I want to endorse that our following will go and subscribe to him. Go to the first comment to the top and check out the Kosher Clinician YouTube channel. Hit the bell. And we're seeing a lot more brothers get involved in wanting to come into the community. They're spending their money on equipment and trying to figure out how to reach our brothers. So we want to continue to support the brothers that are coming through. So a lot of you men can have more content creators that you can watch, you can go to, and things like that. And I'm really, really thankful. Any last words? Anything else you want to say, brother?
Well, listen, I would say my last comments are that oh, how beautiful is it for the brethren to dwell together in unity, and also iron sharpens iron. And so when you have a cadre of black men coming together and working together for a common cause, which is male empowerment, we more or less break the psychic schema that a lot of black men are dealing with. So, I want other brothers to come support this channel, and we form a coalition and a collaboration. Whereas as men, we may not agree on all things, but we have one common thing in essence, or one common thing in mind, is the empowerment of the black man and the empowerment of the black man to live out his life and live out his own purpose at his own terms. So that's my closing comment. I'm grateful once again to having you having me on your platform, and once again checking me out on the channel called The Kosher Clinician. All right, The Kosher Clinician on YouTube.
Guys, check him out on the first comment at the top. And guys, thank you so much for the support. I've been trying to get these out as much as I can. I did a lot of collaborations this month, and then it was a very, very interesting month. I thank all thank the Kosher Clinician, thank all the brothers who watch our channels. We have a lot of talent as far as guys who are coming into the content creation. They're bringing their own personal skill sets they've worked for in the year, and then bringing it on the YouTube. And they're talking about things from their own professional environments. I think that gives us a lot more diversity, a lot more content, a lot more things that we can play with. So now I can have a little bit more interesting panels now, because now we have brothers that are coming from things from different perspectives. And I really want to do the work and bring a lot of our people together, bring a lot of our brothers together. And I really do thank you for supporting our platforms. And again, thank you, Brother Kosher Clinician. And as you know, the buffoonery remains all-time high. I'm out.
All right.